Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams and would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. You also get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share works in progress, tips and feedback, work encouragement, and more. And you also get access to an online archive where you can read my comic books digitally. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. There you can pick up all of my books. And speaking of Patreon, I want to give a quick shout out, a greatly appreciated shout out to returning patron Jordan Von Edward. He's joining at the $20 level, so that is very much appreciated. There's various tiers for various rewards. So yeah, please head on over to Patreon, check that out. And Jordan, it's great to have you back. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And again, I think I mentioned this last live stream, but if not, I also want to give a shout out to Timon Boyd for signing up, becoming a patron. So thank you as well. Your guys' support is greatly appreciated. It allows me to continue doing these live streams, and it allows me to connect with you guys more and share more of my process. And speaking of sharing my process, I can see that that Omar is already in the chat and excited for this Saturday session. Thank you, Omar. Glad to have you here. So I've got plans on Sunday. I'm not gonna be able to do the regularly scheduled live stream, and being that I'm just getting back into my rhythm, I didn't want to miss another week after just start going back into it. So I thought, all right, we'll just do it a day early, and and then hopefully next week we should be back to our regular schedule. I have to figure out whether we're going to be doing the Patreon exclusive live stream, the second one for this month, either this week or early next week. I'm still figuring that out. Life is in flux. Things are constantly in change. Got to learn to go with the flow. But again, I appreciate you guys working with me on this. So what are we doing today? Today, we're going to be doing some frame studies. I was doing some sketching and I was watching a workshop earlier today from storyboardart.org. They got me thinking about film frames and action and story. And one of the best ways to improve your abilities at telling stories, at composition, at value and tone is by doing frame studies. So I am going to throw a photo in here. And today I was going to pick a frame from, let's see, so many great things to pick from. Let's see here. I am trying to decide. Originally, I was going to do a shot from Night of the Walking Dead or Night of the Living Dead, but I think these frames from Troy are very compelling. It's a big, massive action shot. I'm trying to decide whether I want to do this one or... See, here's the thing. There's a little bit of blur on this image, but it's a very dramatic action shot. You know what? Why don't we go with the I'll just hide the layer behind. Let's go with this one. So this is from Troy, starring Brad Pitt. Is it Wolfgang Peterson who directed Troy? I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know. I should know because I'm doing a study from his film. And usually I try to keep track of who the cinematographers are when doing frame studies. But like I said, originally I was going to do something else. I was going to do Night of the Living Dead. So this is just sort of a quick shift of gears. So I like to treat these things kind of as value studies when I do them. Let's see, Chris is in the chat. Hey, Chris, glad you could join us. We're doing it on Saturday instead of Sunday here, but I'm glad you made it. I sent a little post a little while before just to try and give everyone a heads up about the change of schedule. So I'm glad you were able to make it. So let's see here. So a little bit of a cheat here. Instead of just drawing a loose frame and not necessarily getting it exactly where I want it, what I like to do is take is just duplicate the frame that I'm going to be studying. Oh, wait, no, I grabbed the wrong one. I meant to grab the bottom one. And then just fill, and then alpha lock. So now at least I have the proportions of this frame exactly the same. And I see Suretzi in the chat. Suretzi, thanks so much for stopping by. Good to see you. We're doing some frame studies here from Troy. Now it's driving me nuts. I'm gonna look up and see who the director is, because it's driving me nuts that I don't know off the top of my head. And it is, I was right, Wolfgang Peterson. See, I was guessing, but I'm glad that it stuck in my brain at least a little bit there. So Wolfgang Peterson's Troy. Now, generally speaking, I usually am doing my frame studies in black and white because I'm just trying to focus on lighting and composition. And I'm going to stick with that, even though I am very, very tempted to do a color study. Let's see here. So I just put a layer on and change it to hue. So now everything here will be black and white. And the nice thing is that I can start blocking this in. Noticeably, the pretty much the sky is almost the same as my ground color that's around the outside of the frame, which actually tells me maybe I should just make it white. I generally tend not to like my background color to be white because it's just, I don't know, it's sort of more, it's easier on my eyes, a little bit of value and tone. So let's go in here. And so I'm going to start with just blocking in the sky values. Really, I'm just separating sky from figure. And this is a pretty simple composition. Now, I wonder if that color drop is so powerful because trying to reduce the threshold here. There we go. I want to go just up to where it will 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There we go. I just want it to be powerful enough to fill in the space completely, but not so powerful that it bleeds into the rest. So starting really simply with just sky value. And to be honest, it really doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, I'm really kind of being silly about it because if I come in here, it's probably better just say, all right, how low does the sky go? There's little places where the sky peeks in underneath the characters, but I can come in and start with the background characters and try to work my way slowly forward. So let's go with a dark gray, and this is probably still not even dark enough, but it'll be nice. It'll leave me someplace to go with my values. I'm going to start with the figure on the right and just blocking in sort of a rough silhouette of his body. So as I'm doing this, you guys do not need to ask me questions that relate to frame study. So if anybody has any questions about art or comics in general, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer. As I always say, I don't have all the answers, but whatever I do know that's useful, I am happy to share. So the Brad Pitt character is not completely centered in frame, but he's just off center. And when I say just off center, I mean barely. Like he's very much framed in the forefront. And I'm really just using simple boxes to block in his position. To be honest, I kind of want to drop his chest forward more and really get that sense of foreshortening. So his forearm goes back, then curves forward, grasping the shield. Shield's coming up into frame. There's so much chaos in this frame. The other guy's head, I'm looking, and there's little things that I do when I'm doing studies like these. Like I'll look and say, all right, if his head is about here in the frame, I'll look over and say, well, where are the other characters' heads lined up in proportion? If you look over here, the top of this guy's head is kind of halfway, not the midpoint, not at the eye line of Achilles. That's the character that Brad Pitt plays in this movie. It's not quite at Achilles' eye line, but near it. I can block in about where his head is to give me a sense of where his shoulders are. I mean, I could do the same thing with the shoulders as well. Like I could say, where are the shoulders? This guy's shoulders in comparison. His shoulders are actually about at the bottom of Achilles' head. And he's kind of like got an upright. Like I feel like the camera angle is not a super low angle, but like the camera feels like it's posed right below the chin of the second character. Like it feels to me as I look at this, if I were to switch to red real quick, well, it doesn't really matter if oh wait, it does work. It feels like the camera horizon is right here. Maybe a little bit higher. But so we're just we are looking up at the characters, but just slightly. and something that I have to remember. I was about to erase out of this, but then I recalled that because I have this layer on an alpha lock, instead of erasing, I have to pick a color around it and just draw back in with that color. So I was really looking for a wide variety of either Greek or Roman mythology films, frames that are based on Greek or Roman mythology. In response to the live stream where I was working on character designs for my next comic, and I said I should really have a lot of reference. And so I said, well, let me gather some reference for the next time that I'm doing a stream where I'm working on the comic or working on the character designs. But the nice thing is that having this reference can do double duty. So at this point, I've kind of got all the characters roughly blocked in, and now I can start working with values a little bit more. Let's see. I do see that there's a little bit of light. It's interesting. The sky is actually, from a value study, the sky is slightly darker than the little bit of light that's peeking in. I'm going to turn off the black and white overlay. If you look at this, the sky up at the top is kind of a bluer, purer, darker color. And then when you go down here, this little crack of light in between these two figures, it's almost as if there's like a haze of the beach on the ground. So it's a little bit lighter. It's just something I kind of noticed. I try to keep track of these things because the whole point is it's a value study. I'm always working to improve my sense of value, and noticing subtle shifts in value is something that I try to continually work on and improve. So I'm just going to block in not a perfect shape, but just sort of an abstract. As a matter of fact, I think I got too detailed with it. Really, I just need like boom, boom, just like that, just a little L of light peeking through. That's another thing. I tend to overcomplicate my silhouettes. And I have a tendency also to want to draw in the background. It's not just it's two things. One is just the idea of working from background to foreground, but two is the idea of sort of eating my vegetables first, and that the background is usually not the super exciting thing, but by blocking in these elements and painting the background elements first, I can come in and really focused attention and detail on the primary figure of the frame. Like, really, this needs to be just sort of basic silhouette. It's a little bit hard to see here exactly where, because again, it's got a lot of elements in the background that are sort of overlapping. There's multiple guys back here with their shields. And the little sand that's getting kicked up in the front, I'm gonna sort of paint that on last. And really, I need to loosen up with these studies a little bit and take into account that it's fine to not try and capture every little detail. And what's more important is it's okay for me to actually change, even though I'm doing a study, it's not just okay, it's advisable for me to say, all right, what reads? Because that's actually the point of these studies is to learn how to quickly make silhouettes and shapes and values that communicate what's in the frame. So it's more important to make it feel like the frame than it is for me to do an exact replica of all of the values. So this actually feels like I could go a little bit darker with the values here. See, is that the darkest? Yeah. Come in here with this guy and just and let me see if that is enough that I can. No, that still fills the rest of it, which is what I was trying not to do. Now, this also, what I'm trying to do here is just darken him a little bit so I can put in the little bits of area where he is slightly lighter. You can see his face and a little bit of a band of light across his chest. This guy looks like he's got a little mustache or a beard. All right, no need to get too lost in those details. There's going to be sand getting kicked up in front with this. I think this is like a whole torso that's just in between here, between these two figures. I'm going to take that little shape that I drew in there and just move it over a little bit. Now, next comes this guy that's right behind Achilles with his gleaming shield. And that gleaming shield is about, the same value as that little shaft of light that's breaking through. And the whole shield is not like that. In fact, it's kind of a danger right here of wasting time in that that shield just has a highlight. But for the most part, it's the a part of the coloring is more of this darker mass. Yeah, the shield really is the dark mass that all of these shields are. And it just has like a highlight. So I'm going to see if I can play with how to really get that to read as a highlight on here. See here. And Omar says, "How are you?" Well, thank you for asking. I'm doing pretty good. Um, yeah. I actually sat down this weekend to dive back into writing because I realized that I've been taking a lot longer than I'd like getting my next comic going. Even though I was doing some character designs with you guys here on the live stream, I still feel like the writing has a lot more to be worked out and finalized in terms of the story outline. And it felt nice to just I cleared off some space on a table and then just laid out all of the sheets that I'm using for outlining the story. And that was a very pleasant experience. It sort of reminded me of what's true for most creative processes, which is you feel a lot of anxiety right before you start, a lot of imposter syndrome, and you feel like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, this is gonna suck. You know, those are things that I think plague a lot of creatives. As much as I try to be super positive about the creative process, they plague me as well. Um, but what sitting down did for me is it made me realize this is almost always how it's going to feel. I've listened to enough interviews with enough creative people that even people who are super experienced, that have been doing this for decades, feel this way when they sit down to do a new creative project. They have that sense of foreboding, that sense of it just how did I even write before? Um, and giving myself the space really to fail because no one's first pass is any good. Um, Maybe if you're a genius, but how many of us are geniuses? And even if you are a genius, most geniuses will tell you that their first passes aren't any good either. It's just they're so good at it that we don't necessarily see the flaws that they see. So, giving myself the space and the permission to start creating without judgment. And I think that's something that we all need to remind ourselves of. I need to remind myself of it. Um, is to not judge yourself so harshly when you're at the beginning of a project. Give yourself room. The thing I made little notes to myself, like, why am I afraid? And I realized I'm afraid because I want this to be better than anything I've drawn before, and I don't think it will be. And then I said, okay, well, it's not going to be better than anything you've written before or drawn before. The comic that I'm working on. Um, I actually want to just erase out all of this and just try and get the sense of a curving surface. That's what I really want right here. But anyway, giving myself permission to not be good and start anyway. Once I acknowledged, okay, you know what? It's not going to be what I want it to be, period. It isn't. Not on the first pass, probably not on the second or third pass. And when I say pass, I'm talking about the outlining process. And once I said, okay, the thing that you're afraid of is going to happen and it's okay, don't freak out. That freed me up to start, or at least to resume, let's say, because it's something that I've been writing on and off. And what's been holding it up is the exact fear that I'm talking about. Like after publishing 3 graphic novels, I'm like, shouldn't I be really, really good at this now? And giving myself the permission to say, all right, yeah, you should be. But at the start, this thing's just still not going to be where you want it to be. So that's where I am in terms of how I am, Omar, is I am optimistic in the face of the insecurities of the creative process. And I don't think anyone enjoys being insecure, but talking about these insecurities, it's like naming a demon. By having its name, knowing what it is and acknowledging its presence, I feel like it takes away some of the demon's power. And in this case, the demon is the insecurity of of not necessarily having the skill or craft to make what you want from the get-go. But knowing that no matter what, no matter how many times I've done it, it's not gonna be what I want from the get-go. Let's see here. So, while I'm still I wanna keep working on this, this is what's interesting. It's very, very simple, but all I'm trying to do is let me go here. What I'm trying to do is create a disk that let me empty all of this again and try one more time here. This is the reason why I'm redoing this is not because of perfectionism, it's because this is important to the learning process. What I'm trying to do is something that should be very simple and instantaneous. And the fact that it is not coming out instantaneous, I want to understand why so that I can do it faster and simpler. And what I'm trying to do is this shield curves backward in space like this. And if I were to draw concentric circles, first off, I think I drew it going down too low. But more importantly, you know what? Forget about a circle. Let's just frame it as a square. It's angled like this. If I were to draw an ellipse in here, so this is the thing. It's just a simple angled shape. And trying to get it to read like that with just some simple flat value, it's not reading the way I want it to. And my drawing and redrawing is not about perfectionism. It's about me wanting to learn how to do something simple. And I'm trying to take a couple of different stabs at it until I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. Because right now, it's like I see that it's off. And I know that there's a very simple thing that I could do. to just say, oh, okay, I just need to do that and it'll read the way I want. But that simple thing isn't conscious in my mind. I want to say that simple thing is just drawing out a grid the way I did right now. Because whenever I have perspective or proportion problems, gridding it out seems to be the easiest thing for me. Who knows? Maybe that's the answer, is to just leave artifacts of the shape that I do want. Let's make this a little bit lighter. And over here, make this a little bit darker. All right. Excuse me. All right, way too much detail for something that is just a stupid background element. All right. I know I said I was going to move from foreground to background, but I'm thinking that I should just get on with Achilles himself. And his skin tone seems like it's not too far from the value of the sky, maybe slightly darker. I think what I'll do is I will block it in with this value and then come in with a slightly lighter value to establish a little bit of a highlight running along his arm. And meanwhile, there's some dark here. Let's really frame his silhouette by cutting in here. And by equal measure, there's a lot of shadow on the other side of him. I'm just gonna blot out a large portion of his helmet and then paint the details back in. Let's see here. Let's see. His shield has such an interesting shape to it as we're looking at the inside of it. And also his helmet. The light is coming from the left-hand side. Create a little bit more contrast and value there. Come back in and play with the silhouette a little bit more by cutting some sunlight in. A little bit of a lighter gray. Pardon me. Let me just mute for a second. All right, there we go. Had just a raspy throat for a while now. All right, go a little bit lighter here. I was going to try and go in with some highlights, but I actually think it might be more interesting to come in and just do all of this shadow like that. So coming in with highlight, come in with shadow. And I want to turn that black and white layer off for just a second because as I'm looking at this, I really feel like I want his I want him to be holding a sword in this shot. Turn that off for a minute. I just want to check and see. He could be holding a sword and it could be angled down instead of up, but it's too hard to tell with that particular shot with the motion blur and all of that. And maybe he's holding a spear instead of a sword. Let's see here. Let me go a little bit smaller so I can get the shape of that face mask. Shaped like Magneto's mask from the X-Men. And then just a little bit lighter for a little bit of that highlight on his cheek. You know what? Let's go one more value lighter. I have my my palette set up so it's got a range of 10% grays from black to 90 to 80 all the way down to like 10% and then white. And if I need something in between, I can always just I'm trying to work mostly opaque. But if I needed to, I could just drop the opacity. Throw a little highlight on here. Interestingly, it looks like the brightest spot on his face is the little place where his nose peeks out. Got some hair sticking out there. So I feel like part of the experiment slash challenge for me is learning how to put in less detail, because this feels like it has more detail than it should. And the big, I don't know, mystery, I guess the goal for doing exercises like these is it's not that there should be no detail. It's not that there should be detail rich. It's learning where are the places to put detail that will enhance the visual storytelling, that will create that sense of a rich world without you having to render every little detail. And I guess also something that I'm greatly curious about is learning how to put in detail in such a way that it maintains volume and action. Because right now, I feel like with these little details that I'm adding in, to a certain degree, I feel like I'm destroying that lean that he has. Him leaning forward into action. I feel like these values that I have put in have disrupted that. I don't know if it's a matter of I placed his head too high and his head should be dropped a little bit lower on the figure. But the posture that he has, getting that posture to really sing. Let's see here. And we're getting to about an hour. So if anybody has some final questions or thoughts, I don't think I'm going to go long with this session, even though I still think there's a lot more to get out of this value study. But I don't think I have time to go further with it today. So now is a good time if you guys are like, oh, what about this? What about that? Yeah, I feel like the one thing I could have done that really would have helped this would have been to maybe have his head a little bit lower. Lower and smaller, actually. You can see his hand kind of holding the internal structure of the shield, that grip in there. Although I will tell you, there's something extremely gratifying about rendering these figures with just these very simple flat shapes. Still not happy with that shield that's over his shoulder. That definitely feels like that should be darker. And I'm trying to get that snarl without adding white to the teeth because I realize that a lot of times, like with the teeth and with the whites of the eyes, that frequently we will render them just white, like, oh, they're the whites of the eyes, or the teeth are white, so we just draw them white. And a lot of times, if you actually look at the skin around the teeth or the skin around the whites of the eyes, you'll see that value wise, a lot of times they're not even that different. Like if you were to zoom in here and zoom, 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 this blur center screen are the teeth. And as you can see, the teeth are lighter than the mouth around it, but for the most part, they're still a lot darker than the highlights on the skin from the sun. And same thing here. You look at the whites of the eyes, and you can see that while it is lighter, it's still darker than the highlights. It's much closer to the color, to the value of the skin surrounding it. Like if you look at the skin that's above it, that's actually turning over in shade, so it is darker. But if you look at the skin below the eye, they're very, very close in value. Over here, like on the shadow side, it's damn near indistinguishable. So in going in here, it's like I don't even want to add any light to it. It's more just adding dark around it. This feels kind of like a vest, the way it's kind of split in the middle. Nope, I'm starting to get in there in detail, and it does not need any detail. All right. So let's just finish this up real quick with a very simple, pardon me, very simple silhouette for this guy in the background. Like really the rest of this is all going to be mostly silhouette. I mean, I could have saved myself a lot of time by just drawing it all in silhouette and then just slowly pulling shapes out of this, which I guess is another lesson to learn. I'm going to come in with a lighter value and draw that shield that's over Achilles' shoulder. The shield has a nice little crab shape to it, like a crab claw. Another one of those things that I should have drawn first, and then draw Achilles' shield over it. Then I can come in here and just say, all right, this guy's shoulder dips a little bit. There's a little bit of light there. Just a little bit of light between him. Actually, you know what? It doesn't need that. I'm not going to worry about it because it's not particularly important. Let's just draw this guy's arm coming forward. Maybe a slightly lighter value than that, but not too light. Say something like this. I think he's just getting more reflected light from the ground than, say, his buddy on the other side who's in the back. And yeah, he's got an expression on his face. Under normal circumstances, I would take more time to draw that in, but instead I'm just going to draw in the general shape of the opening of his shield, of his helmet. I'm getting a little bit too wily with the details there. Doesn't need it. And then there's, I can't tell if that's an arrow coming at them. And this, I think, is another soldier. I think that these are guys' spears that they are carrying forward. And I'm going to go slightly lighter with that just so they pop a little more. Making them lighter will really help sell that idea that they are forward in front of these figures. And I'm nerfing the perspective there. Let's just give these little arrow tips, spear tips. A little bit of, I know I said I wasn't going to do highlight, but just a little bit of glistening sweat there on his shoulder. then last, although not particularly important, I'm going to grab some of the color of the sky since it's just a little bit darker. And I'm just going to flake in that dirt. It's the kind of thing that, to be honest, I should probably do with an effects brush. Instead of doing it with my regular brush, I should just have like a sand brush, like a little scatter brush. And I do have one. I'm not going to dig it out. Actually, why am I not going to dig it out? Let me just find that little... Look at my brushes. Texture, feathering, gritty. All of my texture and pattern brushes are at the end. Screen tone, flicks. There we go. Bring the brush size down some. Yeah, I'm not going to go through and do it now, but if anything, these sprays should have... I could create a brush that will give me a motion blur type effect, so that the way that there's motion blur in the actual shot, I could just make these with a blur as I draw them. So just, and I think that would actually be a pretty handy brush to have for fighting, for special effects, for whatever scenes. I can see there's a little bit of like spray back there. It's a little bit of there we go. Just add some texture to the scene, to the shot. Let me go back to my regular brush again. That's an idea. I wonder if I hold this down, will that go to the previous brush? No, it does not. That would have been kind of cool. Just adding a little bit of atmosphere here. You know what? I'm going to leave that because, to be honest, I should have done that at the start. It doesn't need it. All right. I know I said I was going to leave it, and then I go and keep drawing it in. All right. So yeah, there we go. A little frame value study there. I think the main thing that I've learned from this is I need to work more on my simplifications, because I spent a long time drawing a shield that does not matter. And I need to figure out, how would I just do this as just a very, very simple disc. It's almost like I got so caught up in the studying of values that I didn't just focus on draw the picture, draw the scene, and then sort of value it out. My brain tends to think either in terms of it really tends to think in terms of volumes and linearly, as opposed to just thinking of flat planes of value. And I think it probably would have benefited me more if I'd sat down and really just sketched this like I was just doing a figure study and then painted values into it. Working with just flat values and shapes is faster, and it's kind of the point of the study. But for this one, the thing that I feel that I'm missing probably would have benefited from a little bit more underdrawing and really building up the figures. So, all right. On that note, we're going to wrap it up here. Again, thank you everyone for hanging out. It's good to see you guys showing up even on a little change of schedule. Again, thank you to a returning patron, Jordan Von Edward, for coming back and coming back strong. The $20 tier, various tiers for various rewards. We do something. I've been calling it Art Book Study Group, but now I'm calling it Artist Office Hours, where it's just a chance for you guys to hop in on the Discord while I'm live streaming, and we can actually talk as opposed to just, typing in the chat. As little as $2 a month gets you into the basic Patreon tier, gets you access to those bonus live streams twice a month, and you also get access to that Discord server where we have art talk, share works in progress, encouragement, tools, process, feedback, and more, just an ongoing conversation throughout the week beyond just what we do here during the live stream. And you also get access to a digital archive where you can read my comic books online. So head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Also, I never say it enough, hit that like button, hit that share button on the video, spread the word. If you know anybody that you think would enjoy it, definitely send that out to them. If you want to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress, animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, a blog post about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books free digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It is a retelling of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion to the series, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, thumbnails, script excerpts, and more. There's even some photo reference in there and how I use photo reference. And if you want to check out what's inside these books, before you pick them up, head on over to my YouTube channel and scroll down to book flip-throughs. There's book flip-throughs of all of them. You can see what's inside before picking up. All right, guys, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you. I will see you next week. That's it for now. Go be creative.